Great. Welcome, guys, to my session about versioning, testing, and deployment automation combined in the Devin tool. Just a show of hands, how many are already familiar with versioning, testing, and deployment automation? Okay, that's about half. How many are already using tools to automate these things, like Auto for deployment automation, for instance? Yeah, great. Anybody using Inspector Pro for change tracking and stuff? Okay, nice. So I'll go through pretty quickly some scenarios and show a short demo. We only have 30 minutes, so it's going to be a bit tight. And then hopefully there'll be space for a discussion afterwards where we can talk about what you would wish were in the ecosystem and so on. First, briefly just about me, then we're going to look through a few common scenarios that I've chosen, all the way from solo development to collaborative development to more advanced multiple server environments, stuff like that. Then a few examples with the Devin tool, and then the open discussion. Briefly, I have been working with FileMaker since 2012, stumbled upon it very randomly, probably also like you did at some point. Then I've previously done a startup where we did an AI calendar for farming, so nothing FileMaker related. And then I've been working on Devin since 2021, but not full-time, but I'm full-time now. I have a master's degree in software development from the IT University of Copenhagen, where my thesis was actually to develop the foundation for Devin, this tool. Yeah. On the side, I'm also private in the Danish defense. So if we go into the first scenario here, where we look at solo development. In this scenario, we are a single developer, and we could do either local or live development. Collaborative development means that we have multiple developers working on the same file. You may even have a development server established. And in the more advanced scenario, you may have multiple files, multiple environments. Yeah. So in this first scenario, imagine you are a solo developer. You may do local development. But that gets kind of tricky, right? Because how do you manage versioning? You may do you be used to duplicating files and call them different file numbers and underscore final one, underscore this version, stuff like that. And then what about if you want to push that to a production server, right? You have to maybe do some manual data migration using the data migration tool. You have to transfer the file to the server afterwards. If you do if you're working on a Windows server, you have to you have the slow experience of transferring a large file through a remote desktop application. It's just really cumbersome, right? And this tends to, this is so cumbersome, so that it means that a lot of us, instead we just do live development because it's faster and we don't have to deal with all that hassle. So the challenges for this is you need to have large storage requirement on your computer because you have to do all those backups. You have this manual file copies, and you have slow file transfers, and the manual use of the data migration tool, which is just not ideal. In live development, it's faster, but you have the high risk of data loss and system downtime. You also have to schedule it because maybe you don't want to mess around in the file while certain clients are connected. And it's really hard to roll back and revert any changes because you don't really have any easy way to do that. And you don't have a change tracking history. So now imagine that your team grow. Now you're 2 developers. You have a development server in place, and you can access that file simultaneously. That's okay, but it also comes with its challenges. So sometimes maybe instead you do separate files because you cannot edit in the same script at the same time, and yeah, that's just really confusing. But then if you 2 developers work on separate file, how do you cannot really merge those things. How do you know what to replicate in a UAT or production environment then? like you have to manually sit and compare these files, who did what, and then replicate that. So here, the challenges that we experience is that what was previously easy now gets impossible for the collaboration. You still have to do some manual file handling, like duplicating the file, calling it something so that you know which developer works on what. You still don't have a change tracking history. Yeah. So now in the more advanced scenario where you could be 3 or more developers, you may even have like a test server, a UAT server established where you want some flow to also being able to push it out to the test. And then you also want to be able to push it out maybe to different production servers. You may even have like multiple production servers. If you're like running a vertical solution, you may have client ABC. How do you manage this? Like, how do you know which version is where? This version on the test server, what version is that? And what version is on the different production servers? So now, that was just like a very brief, like, 3 different scenarios where I'll show now in the Devin tool how we could automate these kind of things. Last year I had a pre-recorded video, and now I'm going against the odds of actually doing a live demo. So let's pray for the best here. So here I have my Devin app. You cannot see that because I'm not duplicating this. Here we go. Is this large enough? Yeah. I have my Devin app here. I open it up. I get presented with 2 different development servers that I'm a part of. I connect to this one. And now this is going to be like pretty fast because again, we only have half an hour. And I highly encourage that if there's something in this demo that you want to learn more about, come visit me at my booth. And we can have like an in-depth discussion, and I can show you even more about it. Here in my Devin app, I will briefly just show you a monitor window here. This shows me the different servers that I have in this development environment. I have a development server with these files. You may see that they are called _main, _main, _dev, _dev. These file namings is something that Devin completely handles automatically for you. I also have a test server with some different file names, and I have a production server with a client ABC of both my UI and my data file. So this is just a scenario that we'll be going through in this demo. Is this large enough that you can read it? Yeah. Great. If I open up my workspace here, again we see I have my data file and I have my UI file here. I also have something that we call deployment targets here, and this is where I can connect my development environment to targets that I want to deploy to. So if you're familiar with Auto, this is kind of the Auto part of Devin where you can deploy changes. For each of the deployment here, I have my test deployment, that's the file on my test server, and then I have my client ABC all on the production server. It could also be split out on multiple production servers, it doesn't matter. You can then connect these deployments to a release branch in Devin, and that means this is the branch that you will allow Devin to deploy from. So it allows you to kind of make some pretty advanced restriction and workflows. We can also see what version of this file are on the different deployments, and we see that the latest version that we've shipped, or the latest version that is on the main branch here, they are all deployed. So let's go in and try to make a change on our development file here. I can open it up directly from here, so we don't have to mess around in the FileMaker menus. And this is a shared workspace, so every developer, a part of this team, will be able to see this. And they will also be able to see this whole change history that we have here. So let's say that we want to go in and we want to just make a few changes here and there. We want to delete this. Maybe we making a bunch of changes. Maybe we even want to delete this whole script. Now, imagine that we have also established some test scripts. So that is something that is not really commonly known in the FileMaker space, but in Devin you can actually run what we call regression tests. So it's still up to you to write your own tests, and you do that by writing scripts that actually test your solution. I'll show a little bit about that, but otherwise come to my booth and then I can show you how that's done. But the idea is that instead of just now believing that what the changes we just made, we just assume that they work, instead of doing that, I go in here to my test scripts here, and here I have my different test scripts in my solution that test certain functionality. So in here, I have some pre-tests, and I have a post test as well. We will not run this because this is actually what I'm going to use in my post-deployment test. But I can go in here, I can click here, and Devin will automatically run all these using the ODAT API on the server. And okay, great. We just found that all the functionality that these tests tested completed. So we could go ahead and, if we wanted to, we could run an analysis to actually see the changes we also made. But for now, we'll just save this version and deploy it. This was a very big feature that we just completed. And this is a 3.0 version, let's say that. So this allows you to easily just save a version, and a version here is just a backup of the file that Devin just handles. The idea with this version is that these are something you can deploy out or something that you can later revert to. And it gives good team transparency because you have a history of all the changes and who saved the version. Now, if I go back here to my global version history, where we can see both my main and development branch, if we want to push this to production, because our the test, because we have connected it to the main branch here as a release branch, I have to release this to the main branch. So I highlight it and I release it to main, and I click release. That will swap over, and then when we go back here to the deployment targets, we now see, instead of saying on latest version, they are all ready for an update because they know that there's a newer version available. Here we can specify options for the data migration tool. For the test deployment, we'll just go ahead and just deploy it now. Now it's in the update queue, and Devin will now automatically perform the whole deployment and the data migration between the two servers. So that is just a Devin server API on each server, handling all the magic, like in the other world. For my production instances here, I have also down here specified a post-migration script. And that is a script that tests a certain functionality in production. So I can highlight, or I can enter the script name here, and I can even tick this off, revert on failure. So that means if this script fails, Devin will automatically initiate a rollback. For now, we'll just also deploy this. And we can see our test deployment here. It's already going. It's now closing the target file. So you can follow along here live. If I click the logs, we'll be taken to our migration site here, and we can actually even click details. And live logs from the data migration tool, and it is now just streamed into our Devin app here, so you can follow along. Okay, so we're just assuming that these deployments are just going great. Now, let's say that we want to modify something that we have written a test about. So if I go back into my dev file here, I have a very, very simple example of what a test case could look like. I have, what this test tests is the custom function that is called add2numbers. This custom function, it simply takes two numbers, it adds them together. That is the idea, and this is again just a very, very basic idea of how you could implement a unit test or regression testing example. So what this test does is we have a test setup here where we specify a variable number 1, variable number 2, and then the expected result. So we specify this manually, and then we use our custom function with these two numbers, and if that gives the expected output, we exit script with a true value. That lets Devin know that this text succeeded. So in a scenario where, if you think a bit more advanced scenario, it could also be a script, it doesn't have to be a custom function. But let's say we go in here now, and we change something that suddenly will break this test. So now we edited this, and I go in here, and you run all the functions, and now you see, oh, the pre-add two numbers custom function, it failed. So we know we're not ready to save the version yet. So that is an example of how you could implement automated testing. Obviously, the more loosely coupled and independent you write your scripts, the easier it will be to write these tests. And again, this is just a very, very simple example. A more advanced example would be that we have a scenario where we have a script called setInvoiceID. Here we want to compute an invoice ID based on the client prefix, for instance. So this would be something that would run in a production instance. Then, in order to test that, you would still have the test setup where you specify a file name. Then you run the actual script with that parameter that we call mock data. So that is some fake data that you want to test. And you get the result. And then here we simply just check if we are on the client A server, the first character is A, B, blah, blah, blah. So that is a bit more like advanced example of how this could be done. In the Devin documentation on the website, we have some even more advanced examples, and this is still pretty simple. But the idea of having like a setup and then a place where you call a script and then you do the assertion, that's kind of the basic idea about regression testing. Okay, so let's now assume that even though we deployed to client A here, but we were maybe a bit too fast on that. So how do we roll back? And often you have the scenario where if you want to roll back, you can't just rely on an old backup on your FileMaker server, right? Because then the data that has come in that past is now outdated. So what we're doing here is we're utilizing that we have saved all these versions over time. So we pick another version that we want to revert to. So let's say we want to revert to the 2.3.2 here. I select it. I release it to main again. So this will kind of override what is now being able to being deployed. And when I go back here, it now says rollback available because it knows that we want to roll back. Again, I just click deploy, and I click deploy now. And that will just initiate the same process before. Now we're just sending out an older version of the clone and still doing a data migration. So that way we use the old schema, but we still get all the newest data. So that was the demo. Let me go back to this. Yeah. So in the previous example where the solo development became kind of like chaotic and you didn't have like any automation, that's now like safe and simple. Just with a few clicks, you save a version, you deploy it out, like super straightforward and very safe way to work, right? Because Devin handles all your versions. It also handles the automated deployment or rolling back between the server. So all these challenges are now solved by simply having a development server with some automation on it. In the collaborative development example, we now have it all transparent because we have a whole change history of the changes we made. And actually something that I did not show is the actual diffing of what we actually did. It's something I can do in the discussion afterwards if you want, or otherwise come to my booth and we can look at it. But actually what Devin can do is you can compare between version 1 and version 2. You can see actually what was changed in the file. But I've skipped that just for the sake of the time here. And that is actually this. So you'll be able to see, oh, we changed this exact part of the script, or we added, we renamed this table, or yeah. So instead of automatic or manual file handling, that's now automatic. Now we have built-in change tracking, and it's now easy to work on the remote files. It's easy to present and discuss the changes. Yeah, and it's easy to see which version is on what deployment. In the multiple server environment case, you can now manage it all because you have Devin to help you do that. Again, you have all the versions. You have the easy ability to just push it to a test server. You also have the ability to release it to another branch where you can define some rules that will allow you to then push it out to one or multiple production instances. So we now have an overview of the versions, and if we need to roll back, that's super easy. And it's easy to manage vertical solutions. You just click or schedule a deployment, whatever fits the downtime that you've specified for your client. Yeah. So this was kind of like a very fast run through of all this, and yeah, we only have half an hour. But now, actually, I would like to open it up to you guys, because this is what we've been working on with the current version of Devin. This is what it can do. But we're working on something big as well that will launch next year. And for that, it's really important for us that we get as much feedback as possible that we can get, because we need to build something that you need. So, yeah, is there anyone that have any specific requirements, anything that they're doing now that they are really happy about, or something they're doing now that they're not happy about, something they wish would be possible in your FileMaker DevOps experience?
Basically, my wish would be to avoid moving data and moving structure like other environments do. So that's my wish. I have a question about that, but since we are stuck in the process of having a clone uploaded and then use the data migration tool, that even if it's fast, it's not that fast if you need to move a lot of data. What happens during this process if you have a production environment with users that are generally connected, or are ignoring your request to disconnect because you are releasing the new version? That happens all the time. So what happens when you release a new version?
Yeah, so currently Devin don't want to interfere with your clients. That's something that's kind of like a choice that we made in this version of the product. So we're not automatically kicking off anyone. So you would have on your own to kind of make sure that clients are disconnected. What happens if you try to initiate a deployment with people connected? Devin will just back off and give an error in the app and say, I couldn't update because someone is connected and I don't want to mess with them. But would you rather have a feature where you could forcefully kick off people?
Yeah.
Okay. Because that also introduces potential issues, right?
Especially measuring idle time.
Yeah.
Using idle time as a measurement, saying if it's been idle more than 3 hours, 8 hours, or whatever, they probably left.
Yeah. How about specifying a service window?
Yeah, sure. But also the idle time would be a nice feature.
Yeah.
I have a question, if that's okay. What happens if you have 2 developers releasing at the same time? How does the audit log handle that?
There's no audit login, but because everything happens on the development server, so the Devin server API handles everything, so you'll not be able to do that on the same time, or it's the same file that will be moved. So.
For me, my idea, it would be great if you can schedule the deployment. So I say tomorrow morning, 4 o'clock, run on.
Yeah, that's actually possible. I can quickly just show you how that would be done. So back here, if we want to deploy, I can actually just in here, I say, okay, let's do that Saturday at 5 in the morning, boom. and Devin will automatically do that. You don't have to have the app open or anything. It's completely independently run on the server.
So I have a smaller question regarding the little test scripts you were showing earlier, because you had like either it's a success or a failure. Would it be possible to give like a text result of saying like, oh, it didn't fail because of this and that? Like give a reasoning so you don't have to step through the script yourself and you can see it just in the list.
Yeah, so actually to implement some sort of logging that Devin would be able to understand, I guess. Yeah, that's a nice idea. Yeah, if the test script showed the result, yeah. Right now we only have the ability. You have the ability to pass in a parameter to the test, but we have not developed that it could spit out the result. But that's a really good input, yeah.
Sometimes with Auto, my deployments sort of are delayed because a backup schedule is run. So it would be nice to either sort of stop a backup schedule or just sort of account with that. And it's only like a couple of minutes, like 5 to 6 minutes, but it's still annoying for if I want to deploy like midday because something really needs to happen, then it's annoying that you have to wait for like 10 minutes before you can actually do it.
Would you then rather, like, would you want Devin?
Skip the backup, yeah.
So you want Devin to like abort the backup?
Yeah.
Or would you want that Devin asks you, like, do you want to do this another time, or?
Well, yeah, both would be nice.
Okay. But I could just imagine scenarios where you maybe don't want another tool to like abort stuff that's going on your server, right? Because that's...
Well, unless you want to.
Yeah, okay.
In this particular case, I would want to, yeah, because now I do it manually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, can you repeat?
How about incoming API calls? If you have a lot of API traffic, you need to shut down the API data service. That would be nice too, I think.
Yeah. So that's actually the same scenario where you had like regular FMP clients or whatever connected, right?
Yeah.
You would have to.
Yeah, but the service will be staying on, and then it would just kick them off because most PHP libraries will never close the connection. But it's another issue. In PHP, yeah.
What I would suggest is to use the new features to block new users. So you just lock any incoming new connection to the database and restore it once the migration is complete.
Yeah. Okay.
That was a good question now. How do you handle the file name change? Because the file reference.
Sorry?
When you have UI file and a data file and you rename the file, so how do you handle the external data source's name?
Yeah, so that is something that currently you have to do like on your own. But the external data source dialog, in there you can specify either dynamic, like using a variable. So you have maybe like an on first window open script that defines whatever your data source is called. Or you could list multiple files and then FileMaker Pro or whatever client opens the UI file will automatically look in the search order. So we have some examples in our documentation for that as well. No, we're not automating that, but yeah.
You asked for ideas, so of course you open up a bucket of good ideas, hopefully. It would be nice if we don't have to really enter and go into the console of the client. So there's a few things that would be nice to get a feedback on, like could it do a consistency check afterwards to make sure files or data are not corrupted? Because then this would be kind of like our center of the world. And another thing you said, you chose not to force quit clients. It would be nice to have an option because you do have companies where you just said, it's okay, give them 5 minutes or whatever, and then force quit. Again, to get away from getting into the console.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the first thing you mentioned? Because I had some feedback on that.
It was to be able to do a consistency check after the migration.
Actually, what Devin is doing now, but it would be really nice to do it better, but we are actually, when Devin has completed the data migration, we are actually analyzing the logs to make sure that, yeah. But
Maybe to circle back to Roman's question on renaming data sources, there is something, a command line tool, just a suggestion, that can do it. The developer tool, there's an option to rename it, and then it renames data sources and dependencies.
But is that because I'm actually a little confused, because there was some talk about if you had the FM developer tool to duplicate your files or something, then it would automatically do some of the renamings, but I heard people having issues with that.
Yeah, you can use the rename
Yeah,
functionality, and you have to give it a list of files, like file A, B, and C, and when you rename one of them, it will rename the external data source and the other files, because they reference each other. You have to do it all the same, yeah, in the same go. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I think something that we might be maybe looking more into would be to utilize the patch tool for something like this, because maybe the automatic renaming isn't always like working correctly. Yeah, the dream would be like 0 downtime deployments, right, where you only just apply a schema, but Claris is not really wanting us to use that tool on hosted files. You could do it on Linux because you can do anything, but on Windows you'll be you'll be like blocked.
I might have missed it earlier. Did you say there's a way to sort of schedule scripts to run after deployment?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, sorry, this was a really like quick walkthrough, and I also didn't show any of the diffing features. But so in the let's see. In the config options here, we can define a script name, and you can also pass a parameter to it. And then you can specify the same test logic as, I think there's like a network issue now, but the same test convention where Devin will look for an exit script true. You use the same in your post-deployment script, and then if you have enabled the automatic rollback, if you don't get the exit script true, it will automatically just swap back to the previous production file.
Okay, so you could use that to do some like data migration after the update?
Well, that script is triggered after a successful data migration.
Yeah, so you might want to like loop through records and
Yeah.
Okay.
You could do it either to, I know we have clients who use it both for like to like send notifications to the client. So now there's a new update available. It could be to verify that some specific data is still there, that some data migrated correctly, or check that you still have access to the external data sources, or could kind of be very flexible.
Have you tested the data migration on large files, let's say a 5 gigabyte? How long would it take?
It depends really a lot on the file structure. But Devin under the hood is just using the data migration tool with a lot of like safeguards around it that it checks.
Mm-hmm.
But the data migration tool can only use at maximum 1 thread per table. So if you have like a poorly designed file, worst case scenario is that you only have 1 thread on the CPU that can actually do that. But we usually do our testing with like a 20 gigabyte file, and that's usually around like 30 minutes.
Okay, that's not bad. I can deal with that.
It depends how much your file has changed as well. Because if you create a new field, like a calculation, a stored calculation, it will need to calculate it the moment you do the migration. So, but if there's nothing changed, it's really fast because it's just pumping over. If it can do the whole table, it's just copying the blocks in one go, and it's really fast. But if you add new fields, it need to evaluate stuff. For example, auto enters like that. Then it's slower, but it's still fast. It's the fastest option we have right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have to end it here. Thank you, David.
Yeah, feel free to come to my booth afterwards.